Unleash your creativity with your micro welder, episode 18. Today, I'm going to show you how to make these long pink sapphire earrings. This sort of design is one of my favorites, and I find this a lot of fun. Basically, I grab a whole bunch of different diameters of jump rings, and it doesn't matter. Just pick 3 to 4 sizes, not too many because it gets confusing. And basically, I put them down, and then I decide, I'll add a drop like this, and I connect them. Now, if you want them to lie flat like this, you can connect with tiny jump rings in between, but I don't do that. And what it will end up looking like is something like this when you have it dropped. So I also don't like having the biggest one at the bottom. Too predictable. So I do a bit of a cluster, and I'm going to show you how I do that with welding. Then I like to place things on a piece of paper where I can see the difference in hooks. That's not bad. I think I like that better because then it emphasizes the width of this. To the side. And this is not bad either, but I think might be a bit too big. So I think I'm going to end up using this. So now we're going to get started, and first order of business is to put in the jump rings all together to see if we like the results, which I've done on this side. But I'm going to do that part first on this side and then see. And these are pink sapphires. I start by using 2 pairs of chain nose pliers to open and close the jump rings. I find that I like using it this way, using 2 pairs instead of using grounded pliers on one side. It's just easier. And I go closing them. I'm going to check again later, but I like to close them carefully as I think about what I'm going to do next. And like I was saying, I'm going to check later to make sure that they're closed properly before welding, which is essential. But as I'm doing that, putting them together now, I think about how exactly I am going to execute my welding and this video. Okay, so I'm going to see again whether or not I really love this and it's facing the way I'm going to want to have it. So, and it is. That's good. Now, I like welding the drops first. I'm going to show you how. In that, I can then link and zap, and we're done. First order of business is to weld the drops. And these sapphires have holes drilled that are pretty good. Basically, the thickness of the wire is dictated by how large the hole is. And sometimes not much you can do about it with these fine gemstones. But here I'm using 24 gauge sterling silver, which I enjoy using. And what I do is I pinch the top like this and kink it. So kind of like that. I'm using my fingers to kink it, but basically thereafter I want to make sure that I'm doing it with precision, and we want it at the top. And I find this is slightly crooked, and I shift it. I'm going to shift this side. until I am happy with that, like this. Basically, you want this part to be in the middle. Okay, so we've got that. And really, we just want a little bit. But I do want enough clearance at the top of this so that I can have a jump ring through. So I'm just going to have a little bit of extra, like this. And then we're going to weld. What you need to do is make sure that the two wires are touching. The second thing is you want the power to be fairly high. This is 24 gauge. You can do 10 watts or slightly higher. Basically, you want the electrode to touch both of them in the middle. And the problem with sometimes having thick wires is that they are moving away from each other. They're not as malleable. So here we go. And that's all it took for you to have a drop, and it's welded. I'm going to show you. So the two wires are fused together now, and I'm just going to clean that up. By the way, I've got lotion and such, so maybe I should use soap and water. I'll do that later. I do the same thing on the other side for the other stone. And pinch. Make sure that you want to make sure that the clearance is the same. And I think it was. But the same height for the other one. Okay. So I'm going to show you this. Sometimes it's hard to control because there's a lot of silver and it's not perfectly the same because I pointed to the side and melted wonky. That's okay. You just use a file and take it down. So it's hard for me to do it like this, but basically I'm going to rest my hands and I'm going to file. It's starting to smoothen out and I can keep going. So this is a close-up after I've filed the tips. You can even them out. There we go. Okay, now I'm ready to weld the jump rings, but I'm not going to weld the very top and the very bottom one, and I'll explain why. We want to put it into the earring hook or add your stone. So you want to make sure that it's all okay before doing that. And I'm going to, because these larger rings, the thicker ones, are 18 gauge, I'm putting a setting higher. And if you're using a mixture of tiny rings, thinner, thicker, you want to do all the big ones first, or otherwise you're going to have to twirl back and forth. So doesn't matter which way you start. Here we go. Okay, so this works out, but I'm going to weld on different sides just to make it more secure. just in case, even though it's pretty secure right now. The other thing is, unlike permanent jewelry, where on a bracelet, it's going to go through a great deal of tussle. Earrings, there's not going to be a whole lot of weight. So it's okay. You don't need to do many points. So that took more than one try, but that's okay. And sometimes you will find that if your jump ring is not completely flush, or it's got a bit of a gap like this at the top, but closed here, you can actually increase the power a little bit while you have your electrode there, and it melts it better. It compensates a bit of imprecision. You should always check with 2 pairs of pliers. And I think I've got all of that. So I'm going to show you the last step. Now, do I want it like, so this is the front where I'm going to put a hook, and I'm going to add the jump ring here. Okay, the reason that I weld this first is it's a lot easier just to weld the jump ring without having to worry about this and welding this part through the jump ring. Perfect. And then I'm going to clean it all off later. The other thing is, if sometimes it doesn't look great, you can always file it and buff it. One last check to make sure everything is sitting facing the right way before I add the earring hook. Now, because this hook is open here, there's a slit that's open, I can put this on and weld, and then weld. I can weld this first, I can weld that later. But sometimes check if it's already done and welded. You don't want to pre-weld and then having to cut. So sometimes I forget that. But in this case, this is open, and I think I prefer to weld it on its own first and then loop this so that I have more clearance. I don't need to weld right like this. I can weld it on the side. So, and this is almost 19 gauge, and I'm going to use 8 watts. There we go. It's done, and we're going to clean it up. Now I've got this welded, and I'm going to open this. By the way, at this point, you want to make sure if there's a difference between front and back, or there's a more preferred side, make sure that you've got it arranged such that the side you want is facing out. Let me close this shortly. Sometimes when I hear the snap, it doesn't sound, it sounds a little bit hollow. That means it, for some reason, has not taken. And I'm just going to squeeze it, make sure I look at it this way as well to make sure that it is good. That sounded better. And it worked. I'll do this side as well. By the way, I use the fiberglass brush to clean oxidation, but sometimes it gets stubborn, and if there's a large surface, I find that the polish and shine for your nails, the buffer, works really well. And there's a large surface, or it's kind of stubborn. And these are the finished earrings after I cleaned them with a fiberglass brush and buffer. For the jump ring sizes and list of components I used in this video, please see the captions. I hope you found that episode to be interesting. And if you did, please like and subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And actually, it helps the algorithm. I'm a wholesaler of premium quality chains and findings, as well as micro welders. I'm going to leave a note below, a little bit more information about our company and what you've seen in this video.